I'm Jemimah, and I'm here to inspire. In every show, we discuss trending matters, lifestyle, culture, leadership, education, and lots more. And I look forward to meeting you. As we engage business leaders, social entrepreneurs, academic professionals, proactive youths, join me on the show every Friday. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. So, if you're watching on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, on the Now Network, on the TV, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our page on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. Leave a comment if you have a question. Please comment in the section down below. We would love to hear from you. Today, I have a special guest of honor. I have a big surprise for you. We are focusing on love, dating, and marriage. And on this beautiful episode, we have the Delaware Love Doctors introducing Dr. Timothy Johns and Monique Johns. So happy. God bless you.
God bless you.
Hey, my beautiful. Good to see you. How you doing, ma'am?
Great. Fantastic.
Well, I want you guys to know outside the camera, she is a beautiful lady. Monique Johns is a beautiful, exceptional woman. She actually ran for government position, representative for the Middletown area of Delaware. And it's amazing to see a young woman be that bold to come out. I really admire and love her boldness and her courage. And, she's a trailblazer and a pace setter for other women. And that's one beautiful thing I love about you. And thank you for, coming out to... What really motivated you to do that, to come out as a pastor's wife, as a pastor, and wanting to lead the community? What was the passion behind that?
Well, to be honest, it was never on my agenda.
Really?
Never part of my strategic plan.
Wow.
My daughter, my oldest daughter, was helping someone else campaign. And all of a sudden, that individual kept calling me. And I just kept saying, I'm not interested, I'm not interested. And then the third time I said, wait a second.
Look at that.
Let me go pray about it.
Wow.
And I prayed about it, and I spoke to my pastor and my husband, and he told me after he prayed about it and said,
and
God
he's
said,
your pastor, your husband?
My pastor and
my
boo boo. He played several roles in my life.
Oh my goodness. That is sweet. So sweet.
When he gave me confirmation,
right.
I said, okay. Because I'm already serving my community.
Okay.
I love people, so I'm around people all the time. So my heart is always for the people, so I'm always serving. So that's what a politician or is a servant.
Wow. That's incredible. Did you hear that? Well, on today's special edition of the Jemimah Show, you see they have scrubs on and they have the coats, the doctor's coat, and you're wondering what's going on. They are the Love Doctors of Delmarva. They cover the entire Virginia, Delaware, Philly, just name it, Maryland. If you have a problem in your relationship, they're the ones to go to. So I am so honored that you're here.
Thank you so much.
Because relationship is just one difficult thing to keep, and when you're in love with someone, it feels like it expires at some point. And for me, Jemimah, I have an opinion. I feel that you guys are doing an excellent job. A lot of marriages are breaking because people don't realize that they need doctors in their marriages. You see how the body gets sick? That's just how you need to treat marriage. Marriage is a life. So tell us, what has kept your marriage going and for this long?
Well, you just mentioned that love, and his love was not enough for me.
Wow. His love was not enough
for me.
No,
not early on.
Not at all.
Really?
No.
Not at all.
How is it possible that your husband's or your wife's love is not enough for you? I thought that was all you needed in life.
It is. And he talks about that all the time.
Well, we think that's all we need.
Oh, wow.
But in reality, there's a place in all of us that no one can really touch or satisfy but God.
Wow.
And we have a tendency in relationships to put too much pressure on our mate to
Yes.
fulfill a place that God only fulfills himself.
Absolutely.
And so we had to discover that. I remember early on we were having challenges, and I was doing everything I thought.
He was doing everything.
And I'm sitting there going, I'm doing everything I know to do.
Oh.
And something's wrong with this chick. I ain't got, somebody
He just didn't meet my expectations.
Somebody
I know,
sold
right?
me. I wanted to take her back to the store.
Oh my goodness!
Somebody sold me. I wanted to look at the warranty because this product is not working.
No, this is not what you bargained for. Like this
Now the
is too
sex
much.
was good. Now the
Yeah.
sex was good though.
Oh my God!
The sex was
But
good.
still wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Really?
Because sex will never sustain your relationship.
No.
I like that.
It will never sustain your relationship.
Now let's talk about sex in marriage. This is very interesting.
yeah.
It's so in the church, sex is a subject that the pastors don't want to talk about, yet is ruining marriages. No pastor want to get up there and pulpit and say, "Oh, husbands, have sex with your wife."
Right.
So how do you deal with sexual starvation, and how is sex not enough? A lot of couples out there, especially the men, think that sex is all they need to keep a woman going. So why is sex not enough?
It's not enough because it doesn't totally satisfy. It's an act of fulfillment that is temporary.
I was going to say it only lasts for
Yeah.
that period of time.
Yeah. True intimacy
Yes.
is two coming together, becoming one. That's true intimacy. Sex is a metaphor for communion.
Wow.
It is a metaphor. It is an illustration
Yes.
of how we're supposed to become one.
Wow.
So it was never designed to be the main thing, although we enjoy doing it. But, I was looking at a scripture where it says Enoch walked with the Lord for 300 years. And then he begat a son at 65 years in, and then for the next 300 years he walked with the Lord, and the Lord took him. And that word there, took him, means they mingled together. They become one. They became one. And so when we put too much emphasis on physical activity, we never can really take the relationship to the next level. Yeah, and that's how and I guess the best way to explain that is that when you lose a loved one, you lose them physically, but not spiritually. And Jesus said this when he was leaving. He said, "Listen, I'm about to go away, but it's better for you." There comes a time where the relationship has to transition into a deeper spiritual connection.
Oh my
and
goodness.
not a physical connection.
I'm glad you said that because when we early on, he loved me and the sex was fantastic.
Right.
But when he got a relationship with God and began to develop the relationship with God, the sex was different. I tell people all the time,
wow,
it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
Wow.
But he was the same person, but his spirit, it was a spirit of God. That the sex, everything changed. So I always encourage men that if you want your wife to love you the way she needs you to love her, you have to learn first how to love God and have commune with him, because it's different. It's just different. And I tell him all the time, he's like, "Really?" It's like, "No, it's just different."
And you see, that's a very important thing to pay attention to, because when you talked about when he got closer with God, the sex was different. Now, you were able to understand that because he carried you along. And that's one thing that's destroying marriages now, especially Christian homes. Now, the man gets deeper or the woman gets deeper, but they're not carrying their spouse along. And so, like, you see a spouse is like connected 80% and the other one is like 5%. So the other one is looking over spiritual, and the other one is looking carnal.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about sex and divorce in church. If you look at Delaware as a whole, I have not seen any church that has not gone through a divorce process with couples breaking apart and the spouse leaving the church and things happening. How can we stop this divorce happening in the church as a result of the disconnection between couples? How can couples come together and talk about real talk like this? Talk about sex.
Well,
That's right.
the challenge is there's always death before resurrection.
Oh, wow.
And the problem is we just don't want to die.
Absolutely.
We want to maintain our self-image that God actually wants to change and transform. And so I believe, and I've said this for years, we now have to question when our spouse or when I'm in the dating phase.
Oh, my goodness.
When you say you love me, I now have to define what kind of love that is.
That's right.
Because I have to define that now. We teach single individuals to say, wait a second, he loves you. Let's define that love. What kind of love that is. It's like when Jesus said, I come to build my church. Why did he say his church? Because there were other churches out there.
Wow.
There were other churches. There were other forms of churches. So he said, I come to build my church, the ecclesia, the called out church. So this is how it's going to run. In relationships, the problem is, and I tell you, I sense the Spirit of God really heavy on this, is that the definition of love is improper. And many people are not, they're in love with the image of marriage. They're not in love.
That is powerful. Can you say that again?
They're in love with the image of marriage. They're not in love. And the reason is that love will meet the demand. Love anticipates demand. And love anticipates need. Love is willing to fulfill whatever it is. Love is, when you're in love with someone, you will transform into whatever you need to be.
Wow.
And see, that's the God kind of love. When God says I am that I am, he means I'm ever what you need me to be when you need me to be.
Oh my goodness, that's powerful.
So then we wouldn't have divorces if I become whatever you need me to be when you need me to be.
Wow.
There wouldn't be no reason for separation because I can come. So in the reason to answer your question, there's no death. There's always separate. Whenever there's separation, that means somebody refused to die.
Ooh, so you're trying to say that marriage is a place where you have to die for each other.
Yes.
And then resurrect in a new dimension.
In a new dimension.
Die to your way of thinking.
Wow.
To your way of doing things.
Right. And the reality is the one that's spiritually stronger is the one that needs to hang for the whole family.
That's powerful.
The one that's spiritually stronger needs to get up on the cross and die for the whole family. One lamb per household.
Oh my goodness.
And so you tell me why we have divorce when if we're supposed to be like God.
This is powerful. You just hit me somewhere with that one. I really like the fact that you explained it that way. And one of the things that you said that I would like to piggyback on is when you talked about one couple being more spiritual and being the lamb and willing to sacrifice. And that's very important as, couples watching out there. You and your spouse need to identify who is more spiritual or who is more connected to God or who is willing to be the lamb of sacrifice. Sometimes some of the things you're expecting your spouse to do are some of the things that you need to actually let go.
Nice.
So it will work. It doesn't always have to be your way. And guess what? We'll be right back. Stay there. Join me on the show every Friday. Welcome back to the Jemimah Show. On this special edition, February, the Love Month, we have special guests, the Love Doctors of Delaware. They're right here to talk about what love, dating, and marriage is all about. And we were just talking about, one person sacrificing for the other. And this is Dr. Timothy Jones, and my precious Monique was beautiful. Monique Johns, and we were just talking about love and marriage and how a couple has to sacrifice for the other, and how you just talked about how couples need to first of all die so they could resurrect for each other. That's deep. Now let's take it a little deeper further. Responsibility. One of the things I noticed or I observed in the United States of America is that maybe it's a culture thing, but the women here seem to be more hardworking and seem to take up the responsibility of a home more than men. And it looks like the men are the ones that are the domestic ones, and the women are on the streets hustling and working 9 to 5, double shift, 16 hours, and nurses, and the men are just lounging. Why is it that a lot of men are not taking up their responsibilities and they're leaving the load for the women to carry?
They don't know who they are. They're
Wow.
lacking identity. What I love about our country, Africa, is the men that come here, they don't come with identity crisis.
What? Oh
They
my
know
goodness,
they're the
that's
king.
deep.
They're expected to be treated like a king. The women expect to be treated like women. Men and women in this culture here, they don't know who they are. They are confused. They depending on who raised them, how they were raised, what tragedy happened in their life.
Wow.
They're not able to recognize their purpose.
Look at that.
And they don't that way they
Powerful.
don't value who they are, so they can't give the woman what she needs because they don't know what they need and where they fit in the relationship.
Whew! That's loaded right there. That is loaded. I like that. And to go deeper, I have seen a lot of marriages break up in my few years in the United States, and one of the things I found out is the women are tired of the responsibility. The women are tired of slaving so much and getting to pay the mortgages and all the things, and the men just barely can make a living. How can this, end? What, as marriage doctors, as relationship doctors, what is your solution to things like this?
Well, I think is it's a demonic attack
Wow.
that has hit our country, and really it's a form of perversion.
Perversion.
Perversion is
That's a different level right now.
He's got a revelation on
Oh my
perversion, man.
goodness.
Perversion is when the intended use of a thing is not being used. The man is out of place, and the woman is carrying the responsibility that the man should carry. That's perversion.
Wow.
That's perversion. It's a trick of the enemy to allow that to continually exist. And I think what needs to happen is, as Mo was saying, it's an identity crisis. It goes back to the identity crisis, because when you don't know who you are, you feel naked and ashamed.
Wow.
And anytime you are self-absorbed on what you're not, it means that you haven't had an encounter. Having an encounter with God will reveal who you are. And men are too busy trying to do life without God, most men,
Wow.
to actually find out who they are. And you got to stay connected to God long enough for him to tell you who you are. That's why Jesus, first thing he said, who do you say that I am? Who do they say that I am? And he said it to Peter, and Peter said, you are the Son of God. And Jesus said, that's right. Now let me tell you who you are. So this is how we know that a lot of men don't know who they are, because they have a distorted vision on who God is.
Woo.
If you have a distorted vision on who God is, I can guarantee your hearing is off.
My goodness.
That's why when men hear God, they run from him, because their vision of him is distorted.
Wow.
Fear makes your vision distorted. Fear will have you run from something you need to run to. You just looking when Adam was in the Garden of Eden. When fear came in, he ran. And God said, why are you running? Who told you were naked? Now he was self-absorbed. Now he's looking at himself, and he lost his identity.
Wow, that's powerful. So, looking at what you're talking about right now, you're talking about identity crisis.
Yes.
So most men have identity crisis,
Absolutely.
and that's why they're struggling and leaving responsibilities for women.
Absolutely.
I personally believe that in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth, when He made Adam, He gave Adam the responsibility to take care of the garden. And the woman was part of his responsibility. So you are absolutely right. I agree with you that men need to run to God to find their identity. And so for you watching out there as a young lad, as a young man out there, and you're experiencing this stuff and your wife is the one carrying the entire responsibility, I can imagine how you feel. But one thing I have for you is go back to God. Go back to God. And it's okay for women to support.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
It's okay if the lady is the one making so much. What do you think? It's okay.
It's okay.
But it's not okay for her to everlastingly carry the responsibility.
Well, see, I look at it differently, because if that's her role and together he's okay with it and he's her supporter, then, maybe he's just called to be her supporter.
So how about join me on the show every Friday? Welcome back. We're so excited that you stay there with us, and I'm so happy. As you can see, we are talking about love, dating, and marriage. And today on this series, we are focusing on marriage with Delaware Love Doctors, Dr. Timothy Johns and Monique John. And it's been incredible talk so far, and we talked about so many things in marriage. We talked about sex, responsibility, and roles, and now we want to wrap up with the word submission. Now, the doctors, tell us, what is your own opinion about submission? Does submission mean slavery? Does it mean that when Bible says women submit to your husband, does it mean that you have no opinion as a woman, or you should be a slave to the man?
Again, if you don't know who you are as a woman, you'll look at submission as slavery. I look at submission as protection, as coming up under. So when things happen, it's not my fault, it's his fault, because I'm supposed to be submitting to him. So if he gives me authority to do anything, handle the finances, handle the children, I am under his authority. Now, sometimes we as women, we get upset and then we don't want to submit, but that's when you need to submit.
Okay, let's hold you right there.
Okay.
How do you submit to a man that doesn't know who he is?
Ooh.
But you have to realize that man that you married is a product of your intelligent choice. So you chose him.
That's deep.
And just because perhaps you're growing faster than he is,
wow,
you have no right to not honor him.
You talked about, you're a grace preacher.
Yes.
I would like you to talk about submission in terms of grace.
Well, I think that when we had challenges in our relationship, I've never, it's not in my DNA to quit.
Wow.
It's not even a part of my DNA. It's been a grace gift. One day as I started getting into the Word, and I recognized that she had the ability to influence me outside the will of God,
wow,
I warned her by telling her, be careful that you don't use your love for me to get me to go outside the will of God.
My goodness.
Because true love does not motivate disobedience.
Woo!
And so how do you work together and maintain the responsibility? So we live by this principle, my response is my responsibility. So we are responsible to one another, but we're also responsible to God. And so I recognize that when we were having a rough time, I made a decision that I was not leaving the house. I was not going to leave my marriage. And I went there, and my soul went there.
Wow.
And the minute I did that, grace kicked in.
Woo.
Grace kicked in, and she couldn't stop me from loving her.
Wow, she couldn't stop you from loving her.
Right. She couldn't do anything to get me, because grace is released upon submission. Because he said, humble thyself under the mighty hand of God, and he releases grace. And so what we have to understand is what we need in order to be together is grace.
Wow.
So if we humble ourselves to God's way of doing it, he has to give us the power to stay together. So that's how I get access to the power. You cannot be together without grace.
You cannot be together in marriage without grace. That is powerful.
Because grace gives us the power to do anything that God commands you to do. You're going to need him to do it.
That's right.
Think about it. Anything, if he calls you to honor, you're going to need him to do it. If he calls you to love, you're going to need him to do it. The problem is we're trying to honor and we're trying to love without him.
Wow.
So we have to surrender our will. And I teach this. If my will is surrendered, I'll get his power. God doesn't release his power to a child that's in rebellion.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
He doesn't know. So whatever I'm under, I have access to. So whatever I submit myself to, I have access to. So she was helpless the minute my will surrendered to God. She was helpless. She couldn't stop it. She couldn't stop it because grace was going to come on her. It was going to overtake her whether she liked it or not. Because I had settled in my heart, I was going to die for her.
Look,
I settled in my heart. So no matter how mad she got upset.
It sounds like Pastor Chuks.
It was, no matter how mad she got at me, how frustrated she got, she couldn't stop this thing.
Oh, wow.
She couldn't, because it was pure. See, love will keep you from being offended.
Look at that.
And if you don't think the person loves you, you will be offended.
Wow.
When they give you truth that hurts.
Really?
And I need truth that hurts. Because righteousness is the meat of the word. The milk of the word is the blessings.
Wow.
But when righteousness is taught, it provokes change. Change hurts. So I needed her early on to get me out of an offense by just kind of reminding me that I love you, I'm on your side, but I'm going to tell you the truth.
That's beautiful. That is so awesome. And it's just amazing the fact that you acknowledged it and you are willing to change. That's why you went to God. A lot of men out there don't even accept that they're wrong. And that's the worst thing that can happen in marriage. When you are wrong and you refuse to realize it. Thank you for coming. You have blessed me, and I hope our fans out there are blessed. I hope you got something out of this. Thank you so much for coming. God bless you, Pastor. Hey, my lady. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for watching. And this is just an extra for you. God bless you.